Episode 864, The Things That Will Make a Truly Great Principal.
This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
Today's show is sponsored by MirrorTalk.ai by Swivel. You can go to coolcatteacher.com/MirrorTalk to start your free 60-day trial. I am so excited to talk to my friend George Couros about his new book, and he will say our new book.
I will.
What makes a great principal? The 5 pillars of effective school leadership. Now, first of all, George, what makes this book different?
Well, as you said, it's our book. And before we start, it was such an honor to have you as a part of this. I've known you for, I want to say forever, but I haven't known you forever. I've known you for such a long time.
Yeah.
I'm just honored to have you as part of this book, as well as Allison Apsey, who, is technically a co-author. But we have 15 contributors, including yourself, and each wrote their own chapter on what makes a great principal. And I think that's what actually separates this book, is that a lot of times it's, superintendents, it's, school, admin talking about this. And although we did include, obviously, principal voices, I was a principal, Allison was a principal for a much longer time. I work with principals. We really wanted to get the voice of teachers, students, instructional coaches, different people to say what they thought was a great principal, because we always talk about the idea of servant leadership, but then we don't actually ask the people that we serve what makes us effective. And I asked you, but there is a rule for if we were going to let you write, you had to say you had a great principal. So
absolutely.
If you didn't have a great principal, you're out, right? So, so not that we can't learn from ineffective leaders or administrators, but I think we really wanted to show the exemplary practices.
I tweeted out about my principal, and he's just amazing. I've got a great one. So you've got 5 pillars of effective school leadership. So you've taken all of this feedback. And actually, when I wrote my piece, I actually surveyed teachers and a whole bunch of students to do my little piece because I didn't want it to just be my perspective. I wanted, what does everybody think, right? Because I think that, not that anybody's perfect, because nobody is, but we know the characteristics that make them great. So what are these 5 pillars?
Yeah, so we looked at a lot of different organizations around the world talking about what effective leaders, and they'll have 6 standards, 8 standards, 3 standards, whatever. So we narrowed it down to 5, and the 5 are relationship builder, continuous learner, talent cultivator, resource maximizer, and visionary. And part of the thinking behind these pillars is the idea that Alice and I and the contributors, we never said there's only one way to be an effective principal. Mm-hmm. In fact, we want to just kind of give you big ideas, but you as a school, as an organization, as a leader, you got to make this your own. So, if you believe communication is very, very crucial to your work, then you put it in there. You actually talk about, what does this look like? What does this mean to you? How do you know you're being effective? Because I'll tell you, I don't think there's any profession that hates being told what to do. Education, and I'm including myself in that too. So it's kind of hey, we really kind of said hey, let's provide some ideas, some practices, some strategies. But at the end of the day, the people that are working with kids, they have to figure out their own solutions that are meaningful to this community. And I think that's why it's resonating with so many people. And so the pillars, we kind of are so here's some big ideas, but you got to kind of fill in what this looks like to the people you serve.
So did anything shock you?
I don't know if anything shocked me as much as I wish I would have this book as a principal, just kind of hearing from the teacher perspectives. And one of the things that I've always challenged people, especially teachers, is would you want to be a learner in your own classroom? Mm-hmm. And the thinking behind it, I remember being challenged once saying, well, we should ask the question, would you want to be a teacher on the staff of a principal? I thought that's actually a really important piece. And so when a lot of people take that quote out of context, is well, I would love to be in my classroom. I love the way you teach. And it's not that. That's not what I'm saying. It's do you actually understand the perspectives of the people you're serving? So It's not hey, 10 years ago, I would have loved me as a principal. Well, 10 years is in education right now feels like 100.
It does.
Just even the last 2 feels like 40. So I think that's something that was really powerful. But also there's some timeless things here too. The thing that I hear all the time is that principals bring out something better in their staff when they're really, really effective. So I ask people all the time, this question like, hey, how's your principal? And if they say to me like, oh, they let me do whatever I want, I'm like, oh, that's not a good thing.
No, it's not.
I understand the perspective because we want to be trusted. We want autonomy in our practice. But if someone just leaves you alone, I don't think you'll actually ever get better because of their leadership. Kind of finding that balance of like, when you push someone, when you back off.
So if you could travel back in time, what are the key takeaways that you would tell yourself on day one based on what you've read in the book?
Well, the biggest thing is like probably know who you serve. And I think one of the big takeaways, Allison and I talked about this, I remember texting her, is saying the visionary pillar has to be last. And most people will go into a school where their vision comes first, where they have a vision of what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. And I would honestly say that there's probably one of my issues when I first, like I really, had this idea of where we want to go to school. But as I got to know my people and realized like, hey, a lot of the things that I'm really good at, they're not good at. And a lot of things that I need to be better at, they're really good at. And so we got to kind of complement each other. We got to kind of figure this out because it shouldn't be just this shouldn't be just an embodiment of George, but us as a community. So we talked about that idea of kind of slowing down, getting to know the people you serve, getting to know their strengths, getting to know where they want to go and building that vision together, which is way easier. And I don't think I did that in my first year as a principal. I got better as it went because I realized that it's really hard to implement a vision that no one else is buying into. But if you build it, they're more likely to buy into it. So I think that was probably one of the biggest takeaways for me personally in writing this. And as we were kind of reading the chapters they're going is like the best way to build a vision for a school is not come in there and mandate it on people, but build it together.
Well, I've read so many things that say people first is the only way to go because people first does get you results. When you sit down and your principal actually knows what's going on in your life. And while I always want excellence in my classroom, the way he handles me this month might be different than next month or when I'm planning my son's wedding or whatever is going on, those relationships and those expectations. And I think that's what makes you feel valued when somebody actually knows you and works with you because we've got a lot to juggle.
Yeah, it goes with the ebbs and flows of, who you are as a person, right? I can't say that every day I had in education, I was having a good day, right? There's a lot of days and I had people that really supported me when I struggled and I knew they would count on me. And I think a lot of times the worst days you have in education, that's when you find out who you trust the most and who will be there for you the most. And then when you have those good days, they're way better because you want to go above and beyond for the people that supported you when things were going wrong. So yeah, that's something that really kind of stuck out. I think the other part of it too that really connected with me was a lot of the best principals are very similar to the best teachers. I used to think when I first started teaching, the best teachers in the world, they could tell you October 12th at 10:30 a.m., here's where I'll be in math because they're going to get their kids there. Mm-hmm. And that's why, they do their photocopying for the entire year 2 weeks before and they were done. You'd never see them in that room again. And then I started to realize that I don't even know these kids. How do I know where they're at? Maybe they're ahead of it. Maybe they're behind it. And so it's the same thing, right? With leaders, you don't know who you serve. So get to know them and kind of figure out along the way with them. There's a lot of these characteristics I think are applicable to teachers as well. Because the whole thing about education, it's about elevation. How do we elevate those we serve?
Oh, I love that. And teaching it's iterative and it's responsive. That's one reason I love EdTech is because it lets me do formative assessment so rapidly. But if we go back to the personal thing, now I've got such a great principal because like the other day I got something that was kind of shocking I had to deal with. And I was like, okay, I just talked to him. I said, hey, I just got something shocking and I have my difficult class coming up. I'm just telling you that I may not be my best. And if these kids are not quite right, I may need to call you for some backup. And so he's in my room so often. When I wrote about my Principal Dial, I had been observed like 5 or 6 or 7 times when I sent that tweet out in October and you sent me the message. But because he's in my room so much, it's not unusual and the kids don't go into performance mode because he's just there all the time. And it's not like I'm worried or stressed when he's there. He's there for good reasons. And then he's also there for what I would call backup when I need it. And it's just such a great way to be a principal. And honestly, I had never seen it before. And I'm sure in the book, you have a lot of stories of people who kind of had epiphanies when they got that great principal.
Well, the whole book starts off with me like talking about a principal that changed my life, which I didn't even know that there was such a thing, a great principal. I just thought it was a role. And when you get a great principal, you know. And one of the things that you said, I think, was she did this well, and I tried to emulate it. I was in classrooms all the time. And that to me is exactly what you said. I was the youngest person on staff when I became a principal at my school, and just the title threw people off. People that were way better teachers than I ever was would get uptight when I walk in because they were used to what I call the superintendent's entourage. People were in the board of trustees, totally a fake interaction. They were there for 10 minutes, trying to get a feel of the classroom. But what kind of feel do you get? Everyone's kind of faking for 10 minutes. And so I went into classroom all the time to make it just something that was expected and really to get to know the community. And this is one thing I used to say to my staff all the time. I'm not here to actually observe you. I'm here to observe the environment we're putting you in so that we can ensure that you have all of the things that you need. And I talk a lot about that in some of those situations where I saw something as a principal because I was in the classroom so often. And Austin does a great job of that as well. And I think that's something that's needed. If you're making decisions that impact classrooms, you have to be in classrooms, and not once in a while, but all the time. And that to me is something that really kind of stuck out and was something that I did not realize mattered as much. And I liken this, and you know how much I love basketball. I said when there's a really great similarity between great referees and great principals is that when they're bad, you notice them. Like you notice a bad ref, right? Like you're like that ref. But when they're great, the game just goes on and everything's kind of flowing. And it doesn't mean they don't have an impact on the game, but you don't pay as much attention to them because they put everyone in a space to be successful. And that's that. I always think about that too, right? Like if you notice the principal all the time, probably not the best thing.
Well, and we're to the point where the kids are inviting him into class because like, hey, we're doing this presentation or we're doing this awesome project or we want you to come see us do this. And so he'll say, hey, your students have invited me to see this. I'm just letting you know I'm coming by.
Right.
And that's just so great because he does focus on relationships with students and with teachers. And, isn't that what it's about? It's about changing people. So the book is What Makes a Great Principal? The 5 Pillars of Effective School Leadership. So excited about this book. So excited to be included in this book.
I'm so proud you're a part of it because, there's no one who's influencing me more in this space than yourself. You have just really inspired me throughout the years, and I've learned a ton from you, and I'm so glad that so many other people are going to learn from you as well.
Well, and I will say this, I adore your keynotes because I think every time I've seen you keynote, I think it might be 3 times now, I laugh and I cry.
Good.
Almost feels like you're not presenting, that you're talking to me. So I do hope post-pandemic to get back in your audience and hear you present again because I just really enjoy those stories. So the respect is mutual. And I appreciate you taking the time today to talk about this.
Thank you so much, Vicki.
So I've been testing this tool in my classroom and was just amazed at how it works. You can use Mirror Talk as a professional development tool for teachers, as a reflection station for college students, or for exit tickets with your K-12 students like I do. Everyone will be intrigued by the feedback that they receive after completing their verbal reflections, breaking down their understanding, mindset, and their tone. So this incredible verbal reflection tool for students uses AI to respond in a way that helps coach students on the task at hand. So in my classroom, I might be building websites or working on teams. In yours, you could be doing just about anything. The feedback helps us see where our students are and coaches them to higher levels of performance. It's really an incredible tool, and I highly recommend that you go to coolcatteacher.com/Mirror Talk now to sign up for your free 60-day trial and let your students reflect on their learning. It's truly an awesome tool.
You've been listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. If you want more content from Vicki Davis, you can find her on Facebook, X.com, TikTok, Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Cool Cat Teacher. Thank you for listening.